Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is another day that God has given us. It's bright and shiny in Michigan. There is no snow on the ground, which is a blessing for me, a curse for my children because they love snow. Today, we have another great day where we are hosting ordinary people doing extraordinary things in the world. I am privileged and blessed to have my two classmates from Harvard. We can call ourselves classmates. We
We
spent
can.
a year at Harvard last year in Advanced Leadership Initiative. Carol and Val came in as a couple, and they were a blessing to me, an honor to meet them. And I said what I know about this couple, the blessings I got for 1 year, I will have to share them on tjkshares. So welcome, my friends, Carol and Val. Thank you for accepting this invitation. We discuss and talk about various things here. We touch into leadership, into family, how we were raised. So people can be inspired and not just to look at Val and Carol and say God created them and through them to just go bless everyone they meet. Welcome. Please greet our audience. Then we will start our conversation. Welcome, Carol and Val, tjkshares.
Thank
Well,
you, Jackson.
thank you, Jackson. It's a great honor to get to have a conversation with you.
Thank you once again. We are going to start with where you grew up. Tell us a little bit about your parents and where you grew up so we can understand what shaped to make this wonderful couple, man and woman you are.
All right. Well, I'm Carol, and I grew up in the state of Ohio on a small family farm. And my father was around every day because he was, right there on the farm, and we helped out a lot. And so we had dairy cows and pigs and some chickens early on, and we grew a lot of grain and hay and oats and corn. And so I had a brother and two sisters, and they were all older than I was, and we were all helping on the farm. And if not helping out in the fields or the livestock, we were helping my mother in her amazing and huge garden, vegetable garden. So that was my upbringing. And when I went to college near my home and found a job that took me all the way to Boston, Massachusetts.
All right.
Which was very lucky for me.
Very lucky.
I was in Boston at that time. And so I grew up near Boston. My family's been here for a long time. I was the middle of 5 kids. My father was a business person, but he didn't go to college. He was injured badly in World War II and was in the most of the time between the end of the war and when us kids came along. And my mother grew up in New York City, traveled around, but we were a family that had just about every advantage you could ever hope for. Every school, every tutor. I had 2 older sisters, and both of them, one of them spent a whole summer tutoring me in Latin so that I could graduate from high school. Another helped me through all my college applications. I think they knew I needed help. And so that was a really lucky start to life. And then I met Carol, and it's been pretty good ever since.
Wow. Hardworking parents on both sides, one in Ohio. For my Ugandan listeners, Ohio borders Michigan. So
Right.
Carol's home, in fact, when she explained it, I've driven around that area, and I'm told your farm is still there.
It is. Yeah. My brother is still running the farm. Retired, but he's doing it. He's still at it.
Very good. And Val, did you have siblings? 2 sisters, you said.
2 sisters and a younger sister and a younger brother. So I was right in the middle.
And do they still live in a community where you grew up, or have they moved?
They're scattered around. Sadly, my oldest sister passed away. The next sister lives right nearby. We see her all the time. Another sister's in Connecticut, not far away, and my brother is in Dallas, Texas, but I talk to him every few days and see him often.
Wonderful. So Carol comes to courage to a state that many people actually struggle to say or spare. Massachusetts is on exams around schools to spare it because of all the many syllables. So when you came to, you didn't come to Boston, you came to Massachusetts. How did you two meet?
Ooh, well, when I first moved here with my job, I had to find an apartment, and I didn't really know anybody as friends here. I knew one person through someone else. But I found that I really wanted to explore and try new things. And I joined a sailing club and learned to sail on the Charles River. And then I started taking some classes at Boston University. And I met a woman who was a rower, as in sculling and rowing boats.
Yes.
And so I started to learn that, how to row. And through that friend and reaching out to try new things, I met Val, who's also a rower.
Yeah, we were both invited to a New Year's Day party. It was a very warm day. There was no snow, and got a phone call early in the morning. Do you want to go play soccer and then go have dinner together? And so I went, and then this tall, beautiful blonde woman walked onto the soccer match. I thought, this is going to be good. But then she pushed me and twisted my ankle. I could barely walk for weeks. But anyway, things improved from then on.
He really inflates the story a little bit.
Like I said in the beginning, Val has another career in being a comedian and a blessing. He made us all laugh all the time. So you met Rory. For even Michiganders right now, since I'm Michigan, from Ohio to Boston, such a difference in even how people speak, how people conduct themselves. Everyone I tell now that I spent a year in Boston, like, how was it? It's different from Michigan. So for you coming from a farm in Ohio and meet this young man roaring, did you learn roaring in Ohio, or you learned the skill once you got to Boston?
Oh, no, I did not row in Ohio. I did not really know what it was until I moved here and met a friend at taking a class, a journalism class. And so it was just like one thing led to another. One connection leads you to another connection. And so that's how we met.
Yeah.
So you met, and you have had a privilege and a blessing to have babies who are not babies anymore.
They are not.
How about the baby side of things now?
So now we have a daughter who's married, and we have a son who's he's also rowing right now, and he's on the United States national team this is a week of selection, so we're keeping our fingers crossed right now. But we're very, very blessed, and we had a son that passed away 7 years ago, and he was a very special guy, and has been sort of the spirit that leads us forward to what we're doing right now.
So Ben was our second child, and we learned when Ben was 6 months old that he was profoundly deaf, and he was about the first deaf person we'd ever met. We didn't know anything about it. And we were very lucky. It was one of the best schools for deaf children is nearby. We got very involved from the beginning. Got to meet deaf families, parents, we had deaf people living in our house. We learned sign language, and have continued to be very involved with this school now for 30 years. And so part of this project that we're working on, which we'll perhaps get into later at Harvard, relates to deaf education, and that kind of got us going and made us feel that this would be something that we wanted to do.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Big loss for you. I know when we met, we had talked briefly about your son, Ben, the late. And then you invited me to dinner at your house. And all of a sudden, Carol gives me water in a glass with RIT.
Yes.
RIT is Rochester Institute of Technology, your listeners. That's where Nicholas, our firstborn, goes to school. And that connection right away, when you told me he was deaf, I remembered when I dropped Nicholas that RIT has one of the best programs in the world for both deaf and people who can't speak. Because the mask, when I dropped him during COVID, the mask had an opening transparent. And I said, how is the mask different? He said, because we have a lot of kids who are deaf, they have to read the lips. So for Ben's memory, please teach our audience who don't know sign language how you say I love you in sign language. We love you, Carol. We love you. May Ben's soul continue to rest in peace. And it's always going to be in our memories because the work why we met you, why I met you was driven by what you just shared with us. Because of Ben's accident and his passing away, to drove you into a direction of doing something for the rest of the world in deaf education. So thank you for doing that. And your son will definitely bring up his pictures of his Olympics roaring last year. And I know in Charles River, October last year, Val, you rode in your category of men. Carol rode in a category of women. I missed it that weekend, but it was such a fantastic event to watch. And Val, we asked her about roaring, and she didn't know. But for you, you go way back in the generations of roaring.
Yeah, so my father had been a rower. My brother was a rower.
Yes.
So it was a natural step for me. And our daughter Juliet rode, and now our son Henry is still active, and he was on the national team, but right now he's trying to get on the Olympic team. He's not there yet. We'll find out in the next days or weeks. But that's the challenge. But it's a sport. Excuse me. It's a sport that has led to many friendships. A lot of our friends are involved. It's a nice way to meet people, and we met because of that as well.
Wonderful. Before I ask that question, I interrupted the thought. You remember what you were going to say? I think I interrupted you. Okay, we'll get to it. I'll get it out of you in a minute.
Okay, I'm sure you will.
When we're applying for our Advanced Leadership Initiative, many people read the bios and came prepared. They knew everybody. I made a decision not to read anybody's bios. As I met you in class, I'll go back and read the bio. That's when I learned that I wanted to know people for who they are, not what they have accomplished and they are bringing Harvard. Different way of working. I do fundraising, and I always don't want to walk in and go fundraising based on what I have read behind you. I want to know you, then I can go back and research you after we have a different method.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you. And then when we got there and I read your bio, and you had been a CEO for 24 hours of your family company, Hollingsworth and Voss, at days back in 1700. Please share with our audience, because many do not meet somebody who's been in a family business that long. the challenges of running a family business and how you've lived your life effectively balancing that professionalism, father, husband, brother, and son in all these different dynamics. And Carol, you can jump in because you've lived this whole raising children while supporting a husband, working every angle. And your desserts, by the way, the best.
Well,
right.
So I've been very lucky. My family's been in this business for now 7 generations. The roots of the company go back to the early 1700s in the Boston area, making writing paper, currency paper, and printing paper. And over many, many years, many generations, a lot of reinvestment. It's transitioned. So today, the company doesn't make any paper, but it manufactures the materials that go into filters and batteries, which have been good businesses for the company. And the company's grown, and it's now an international company. And although my father didn't work there, and I was just one of about 20 cousins, I just liked the business and thought this would be a good opportunity. So I was, really blessed to have the chance to work there and also lead it, which was a great opportunity, but also very demanding. And a big part of what made that work for our family and for me was I was able to really focus on that company, and Carol made the rest of the world work and kept our family going and raising 3 kids and helping Ben with the challenges of being a deaf kid and the support, the special support that was needed there. So that was just a great opportunity, and we just hope that the company can continue to thrive and grow.
And Carol, how was that for you? Raising 3 children, balancing, going to volunteer at the deaf school, learning a new skill to do this. And as you finish describing that, tie it into going from that and coming into Harvard University to do Advanced Leadership Initiative with all of us.
It's been a wonderful stretch, wonderful life. Val was really busy with working. You were all in, and he had to do a lot of traveling and having, raising the kids at home. They had with 3 children, and the middle one with Ben needing a lot of support, a lot of extra, a special school that was farther away than right in town. And there was just a lot of puzzle pieces to keep and a lot of spinning plates.
Yeah.
So it really worked to have, we really made it work. And we had the help of family. We both have one of our sisters lives nearby.
Yes.
And they were just nearby, but not around the corner either. So, but we were always available, and we always have family gatherings together here in Massachusetts. So it's really a support system that's just so strong. And we, as I said, we spent all of our major holidays together.
Yes.
Your sister's family, my sister's family, and all their our nieces and nephews, and now babies. And so we have this larger group of family we have to extend the tables at Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. So when they all went off, the children went off to college, became adults themselves. And then following Ben's passing, and then we had a little more time, but it was really started when you retired, but not officially, not really retired at all.
What and
quote unquote. So
yeah, so I finished up being a CEO 2 years ago, and we were having these conversations. Well, what now? And we just thought we wanted to do something significant, and we had learned that the education processes of deaf children in a lot of countries are lacking. A lot of kids drop out of school, like 95% of kids in India, parts of Africa, in China, 95% of them drop out of school in the early grades. And great majority of them don't really develop much language. And they struggle terribly. And it really, really difficult reality for these kids. And we had seen through Ben and his friends and the school that if deaf children have the right early access to language, sign language, and the right education, then being deaf really becomes a pretty minor handicap. It's not, it's a communication challenge. It's not easy. It's always hard. But in terms of developing fully as people and developing their minds and their academic abilities, they're right on par with hearing kids. And so we thought that we would try to help with that. And I've been on the board of this school that Ben went to, the Learning Center for the Deaf. Yes. And I learned that they had really no international outreach effort. Everybody was so busy just running a school. We also learned that nearby is a wonderful school for blind children, the Perkins School for the Blind. And we got to know them. We spent some time with them. And they have a huge international outreach effort. So our ALI project and what we aim to spend the next many years working on is trying to build an international outreach for the Learning Center for the Deaf that's similar to what the Perkins School has done for the blind. The Perkins School has touched over the last 50 years over 1 million children around the world and ongoing contact. And they're really able to fundamentally change the paths of so many kids. And we've seen that ability with deaf children.
Yes. We are going to dig deeper into your project. For those of you who don't know, our program required you to propose a project you'll be working on, a social impact project. And obviously here, no surprises, Carol and Val chose one that was so close to their heart, already involved in a school in Massachusetts, now taking it around the world. Before we go in how you traveled around the world in the summer looking at your project, let's share a little bit of the challenges in each of your aspects of your work. Val talking about you are running a family company, and Carol talking about the challenges. There's a mother there who's going to be, maybe came from the hospital and they find out they have a child who has a challenge. Share some of the challenges so people don't think everything is just, oh, snap your finger and you go and the kid goes to college.
Not at all.
Yes.
So when Ben was born, it was, he was born, but it was the 6 months we thought that there was something not quite right with his hearing. And that was confirmed when he was 6 months old. And he was now what do we do? I had never met, coming from a small town, I just had never met a deaf person. My father was hard of hearing and that was manageable, but to have profoundly deaf. But we, at the hospital where he had the test done as an infant, the audiologist gave us a phone number of a person of a family who has had a deaf daughter, a few years older than Ben was at the time. And we were immediately put in touch with them. And through them, we were put in touch with the Learning Center for the Deaf. And the approach is sign language, American Sign Language here, and we just dove in. We learned how to sign. We had through early intervention in Massachusetts, infants through 5 years of age get early intervention services, and they were 3 years, and they can come to your house. And so we had our sisters and some of our nieces and nephews who were pretty young back then, and close family friends came, and we learned a few signs along the way. Early intervention also had someone come from the Learning Center for the Deaf to our home. And here's Ben as a little 1-year-old toddler, with a woman from the Parent and Infant Program who could sign books with him. And so was modeling for me. And I was just, we were struggling to learn sign language. It wasn't easy, but we learned together. And our older daughter, Juliet, who is 2 years older than Ben, so Ben was 6 months old, Juliet was 2, and she learned how to sign really easily. In fact, she learned really well, and is now in her 30s as a clinical mental health counselor, is able to counsel some deaf people. But going back to those early days, when Ben was really young, we would meet other parents. Being in the Parent and Infant Program, you just become immersed, and it wasn't easy. It really wasn't easy. It was overwhelming at times. And if it was just Ben, but we had Juliet and we had Henry, we had 2 hearing children too. So it was, it was a lot.
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
The key part was just being with other families that were on a similar journey, and realizing that that we would be able to learn enough sign language to be able to communicate well with Ben. And so we went to classes for years, and I think that providing the sign language environment for Ben made all the difference.
And to see the joy in he was the most outgoing kid. He was more outgoing than our other 2 children.
Oh yeah, he was,
and wanted to communicate with anyone.
He had more of a Jackson-like personality. He was always smiling, always out there, full of energy, and
no fear.
He was a busy little guy, but anyway, the big thing was just deciding we would go all in on sign language, and others were doing that in this community, and so that really made all the difference.
Yeah, it was like there were no communication barriers at the school. It was the staff was signing, the kids were signing, the teachers, everybody, and so it was like home base for them. It was just, that's not the word I want to. It was like,
it was a strong community.
It was their world. Yeah. It was such a strong community. So it was just a joy to see. We were, as hearing people, we were kind of on the outside.
But they were very welcoming and encouraged us.
Very welcoming.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
At the same time, Val, here you are leading a family company. You're on a plane to China, but I'm sure all the thoughts are still at home. Your brother at home, the young babies are there. Tell us from the father point of view. I do these trips and I can't wait to land and make a phone call. Now you can. But
very well, Jackson. So the company, a lot of the operations are outside the U.S. And so regular travel to Europe, to China, to India, and Carol would make things work when I would go away. I'd usually be gone for about a week and would come back. It was great when it became possible to use FaceTime to have video calls, and I would have video calls with Ben and the family in sign language. And so somehow we made it work. I think we stayed connected pretty well. And the company, not just because I was from that family, but it's tried to encourage people to have a good family life as well, and have good balance, and that was a value that we tried to make known to people. So, it was really fortunate for me and for our family that Carol was willing to give up her career at that point and just focus on all of us, and it made it work. So I was able to have a really active, full career with a lot of challenge and opportunity, but also have a great family along the way.
Wonderful. Your involvement both in education of deaf, which is the program you are working on now. You started where you're chairperson of the board. By the way, at Harvard, you did several times we'll be doing something. I would say we have a fundraiser to go to. One evening, I think when we were at the island, you had a fundraiser to go to raise money. It all demonstrates your strong commitment in giving back, which roots back to what you have already shared with us. If a young person wanted to follow in those footsteps, what advice would you give them?
Both of my parents really believed in the kind of classic saying that from those to whom much has been given, much is expected. And they would kind of school us in the thought that, essentially recognize the fact that we didn't earn a lot of the advantages that we got. We just were born in the right circumstance. But that we absolutely had to earn that by giving back. And both my parents and their parents, and Carol's family as well, had a strong ethic of trying to give back to the communities that we were part of. And I think that's been kind of a big part of our thinking. And certainly was a big part of thinking that when I was done with work, I needed to find something worthwhile to do that was going to contribute. And so, we just, by just the circumstances of raising Ben and being in the world, and certainly his loss certainly motivated us on this work.
Carol, want to add on anything?
Growing up, my family in Ohio was from a small community, so it's like really a community driven, very close. So you just have that as a basis. That's the way it is. That's the way you live your life to support your community and those around you and your family.
Very cool. Yeah. So in your experiences, what role does continuous learning and personal development play in achieving success, both professional and personal? But also, how do you stay motivated to keep growing and learning new things? And I emphasize new things. We both walked into Harvard. I had this online Canvas system. I am younger than you, and I struggled with it at Harvard. Thank God for Sneha, who was working with us at the time. She works for us today, both of us.
Right.
Sneha, thank you. And I interviewed Sneha also in another episode before all this. But please reemphasize the role continuous learning. And this ties again when you two had a conversation and say, we are going to go in this program and we are going there as partners. And then touch on the challenges you face and why others should be motivated to continue learning.
Always continue learning, because if you don't, it just sort of, learning keeps the wheels rolling. And so you can keep having more interesting experiences and fun and be healthy. And so, Harvard was, there was a learning curve of the technology and going back to school. just being a student again and reading, case studies and books, and that was mind stretching also. So,
yeah.
but and through it all, you meet so many new professors and people, and it was really meeting all the people in the program from 14 different countries, and people like you, Jackson, that has made all the difference. That's the gem. That's the the best part of it, of the experience.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. The only thing I would add is I'm very fearful of getting old and being kind of out of touch and not. I think if we're lucky,
outdated,
if we're healthy, you can have a full third chapter, a later chapter.
Yes.
Years ago, people didn't live as long and didn't maintain their health as long.
That's right.
But I know all those mornings, Jackson, you're out there running along the Charles River in the wintertime trying to stay fit. I think those kinds of things. There's every opportunity to have a long, hopefully long and productive life, but things change so fast that trying to stay up, to just keep learning and stay curious. And certainly when you're in an environment like Harvard with the people we've been with this past year, it's just a great opportunity to just see new things and explore, just a lot. And so I think it's really helped us kind of, gear up for this project that we're working on, and it just opens new ideas and new doors for us.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask, our son Ben was at RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York, and he had a lot of friends that we still keep in touch with today, and we send messages and we see them here and there at holidays when they're back. But they are just such an inspiration because we can see where Ben, where his friends have gone and in their careers, and they're all successful and just on the cusp of getting married and starting families, but they've got jobs and they've got careers and they've got interests, and it's just, and these are his deaf friends that we all sign with. It's so much easier to communicate with a deaf person, hearing people today with the technology. We have text and emails and FaceTime. And when Ben was young, we were typing on what's called a TTY, which was the telephone system back in the 1990s.
Yeah.
But now the technology is so just makes it so much more accessible.
So all this has it's come so far, and with our kids, our nieces, nephews, these friends from Ben, are like family to us.
Yeah.
That just inspires us to try to stay
in touch
a little bit.
Up to date.
A little bit up to date.
Informed.
So hanging around with people like you, Jackson, is a great advantage for us.
Well, you kept us younger, trying to keep up with all your knowledge and experiences, especially in summer when you both decided you are going to go on this journey and go to India and go to Ethiopia. You were this close to make it to Uganda. Then the itinerary became too big. So people in Uganda are still waiting for you.
It is.
Please tell us about your summer travels.
Well, we were really disappointed it didn't work for us to come to Uganda, and we look forward to a future trip and hope to do that. But we wanted to visit schools for the deaf in India and in Ethiopia that we were able to make contact with in advance. All these were schools that had an interest in adopting a sign language based approach. Some of them were pretty far along with that. Some were in the early stages. And so we wanted to pick, do as much of that as we could. So we visited 5 schools in India, and then we spent about 10 days on a service trip to a school in Ethiopia. And that gave us a chance to really learn more about the reality of what people were facing, different schools with different circumstances. So we were able to learn a lot, but also know enough so that we could commit to an early stage relationship with this school in Ethiopia, between the Learning Center and the school in Ethiopia, and just seeing the experience of all these kids. If I can just paint a quick picture here. 2 years ago at this town in Ethiopia, in Hawaii, this school didn't exist. It was really a center initially.
Wow.
So it only had been going for 2 years, and they had 70 children there. And they were signing and communicating, and it would be just like a group of kids anywhere, and playing on the playground and in classes.
Not having it before, not having any communication.
Yeah, so it's only been
very little.
2 years that they've had exposure to any language.
Wow.
And so you could see so clearly the transformational power of just having language. And that's one of the things that's often misunderstood about deafness, is that the key thing is having the language, because without language, your mind doesn't develop. No literacy without language. But just seeing this, and it was a great boost to us to see how much these kids were thriving and learning, and how hungry they were to be together, and to see this school grow.
And the age ranges were from toddlers to teens and 20s.
Wow.
So they were all mixed together and with different abilities in signing, but the joy there when they were all together, being together and having an open season. Let's just, communicate. They had games and they had outdoor classrooms, even though it wasn't an official school until in October. They finally now have a kindergarten, first and second grade classroom.
They had to get a certification to formally school. So they did receive that, and now they're off and running and growing this school. So it's really, we think, a really good school for the Learning Center to get involved with. There's some wonderful teachers, one in particular from the Learning Center, who've been involved with this effort in Ethiopia 12 years. So this will be our first school to really try to help. And we see that this basic model of having a school in a community, there are so many deaf children. A lot of people don't see deafness. It's kind of invisible, because when you're walking around, unless people are signing, you don't know that they're deaf.
Exactly.
But in countries, generally between 2 and 3 babies out of every 1,000 are deaf. And so you run the math, but in a country of India, 1.4 billion people, there's a lot of deaf children. And this is true in China, South Asia, around the world. And so a lot of opportunity, but we could see the effect of just having a very modest school on a just bare budget, tremendous lack of funding and support.
Materials.
So, they couldn't afford enough crayons and pencils and papers for the school. But the opportunity to transform lives so dramatically and at a relatively low cost per child was striking. So anyway, it was a big boost for us to see the potential and the impact, and kind of really helped us know that we're on the right path. And we're going to keep doing that. But it was a great trip. We ended up taking, I think Carol counted 13 flights in 3 weeks, trying to go to as many schools. This was Carol's first trip to India. I said, "Oh, well, it'll be fun."
And first trip to Africa.
It'll be fun. Don't worry.
Yes.
She was an incredible trooper.
Yes, I remember Carol sharing how all these years you traveled so many times, and now she was in the middle of it, and here and park and get in another car. So good job to both of you and for supporting each other. You mentioned something regarding a deaf child or a deaf person when they are walking. You really can't tell. You can't see that they are deaf.
Yeah.
So make an appeal for those drivers who always think that somebody will see them or will hear the car coming and start saying, get out of the way. As they go down the streets here in United and around the world, what do people be cautious about? Deaf people.
Well, just be aware that there's a surprisingly large number of people who can't hear. And some of them are profoundly deaf. And those numbers I gave you are profoundly deaf people, but just people who are hard of hearing. And it's something that you don't realize because we kind of assume everybody can hear, but it's not always the case.
All right. So as two leaders, you finished your year. We graduated December 9th. And you decided I didn't get enough. I'm going for senior fellowship. How is the senior fellowship going and how is it helping you enhance your passion for the work?
Well, it's very interesting. I think I needed a remedial year at Harvard. So you got it all in 1 year. I need two. But because we live nearby, this was easy to do. And I just thought it would be a good platform to continue to work on this project. And we continue to meet people and learn things that we think are helpful to us. A lot of very valuable connections and a lot of advice on how to go about raising funds and launching a new NGO. And so those are things that we're really focused on. But it's a great experience. And I'm able to come home because we live nearby, so it's very easy.
So, Carol, you are not doing senior leadership. You decided to do 1 year with us. So, for anybody who is listening, how can they help in your passion to bring awareness and help schools around the world? How can the public help?
Why don't you? I didn't quite hear it. I am hard of hearing myself. So repeat the question.
How can others who are listening to us help in your mission and around the world?
Well, once we get it going, we'll be doing some fundraising. But I think it's just to be open to the need and the great need for deaf and hard of hearing children in developing countries, and that it's about language access and communication. That is a step to learning. So I think it's just to be open and be patient because we're going to be growing this.
Yeah, we're hopeful.
We
look at what you have been doing all these years, Jackson, and I hope over time we can begin to build something like what you've done.
You've got such a big thing going, and we're at the beginning.
We're inspired. But I think for anybody listening, just the awareness that there are a lot of people with different challenges, and it's true around the world. And that there are a lot of opportunities to find things, whatever someone's calling might be. And this is just one that we feel strongly about. And so we're going to do our best with this project.
Wonderful. And Val and Carol, when I came back March 1st, you came to my talking at CID in Kennedy School. I talked about grandmothers. On March 1st and 2nd, a grandmother is coming from Uganda, invited by the CID Center at Harvard. So you get to meet one in person. You don't have to go.
We will be there.
So one other thing I will add for the audience is to raise awareness. Sometimes we think, or somebody can fund the entire project, or somebody can do this, but raising awareness, the stats you've shared with us, for a parent who hasn't had a deaf child, they might not know these things and schools and resources. So once in a while, we can use our voices to amplify the message, which is one of doing here with each other. We are going to be concluding our conversation. Both of you as leaders and mentors of so many people, what do you hope your legacy will be, both within the family and within your professional endeavors? You've already given us the answers, but you can reemphasize it. How do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, legacy seems like a really big word. I think we hope that people will think of us as people who try to do, some good work and try to make a contribution.
I hope that we can find a way to make this very sustainable for the Learning Center for the Deaf to continue, forward, sustainable, so that it keeps going, not just like a one-time thing. That's not what we're looking at.
Yeah.
So to build it so that it has a engine of its own.
Yeah, there are many hundreds of thousands of deaf children that don't really have effective language. And if we could have some help, some progress there, I think, that's what we would hope to do.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So to all our listeners, if you are sitting down watching this in 2080, I want you to remember that it started by a vision of two people who raised an amazing son and then decided they were going to go beyond Massachusetts to the world. The legacy continues. Your support and raising awareness is very important. And as you make your future plans, add this program into your future plans also to increase it. Last question. If somebody asked you when you are 18 to give yourself advice, what would that advice be, knowing what you know?
18. I would say
That's
I would say to be open to new experiences and the connections. You don't know I had no idea I would land from Ohio to Massachusetts, or that I would have a deaf son, or get married and meet this wonderful man and have a wonderful family. But it was all about saying yes to new experiences, and the more you do say yes to new experiences, the more possibilities are open to you. So not to close in, but to open up.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, and you were very brave to go. I remember thinking back then, gee, is anyone ever going to hire me? Is anyone ever going to marry me? And I would just encourage people, don't worry too much. It's all going to work out. And you don't have to find the perfect passion. Just find something where you're going to learn and grow and pursue that. And that will probably lead you in a good direction and meet lots of interesting people like Jackson.
Yeah, the more experiences you have, the more things you can compare and what makes you happy. And I'm not there with that. I find that interesting. And then the more people you meet, and pretty soon you're where you more likely want to be, and find your career being interesting. And yeah.
That's right. Well, is there something I didn't ask you that you would like to talk about?
Let's see.
Well, Jackson, you interviewing us is really upsetting. Is what you've done, and
right.
But your listeners, I think many of them know what you've done. It's a great privilege to just have been in conversation with you over this past year and get to know you and build a friendship. And we're really looking forward to coming and visiting you in Uganda, seeing Yaka up front directly.
You're such a role model.
Yeah, and
for all of us.
For all of us. Anyway, thank you for interviewing us. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for your.
No,
we are in your presence.
I saved this for last because I knew if I say it earlier, you start getting shy. Our whole year I spent in Harvard. And I'm going to make it general, then I'll bring it down back to you. You who came as couples were a huge inspiration. It felt like you had a honeymoon for the entire year. I personally admired watching you come to class, watching you walk back, watching you host so many different people. I am personally grateful you invited me to your home in Concord. You invited me to your home in Boston. And I still have an open invitation to come visit you whenever.
Mm-hmm.
I was touched to be taught how to roll for the first time. You hosted the entire group of all of us at the boathouse where we danced and bought drinks and ate and met Julia. We were so thrilled to watch your son compete last year. So really, 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 it was such an honor and a blessing to be around you. And especially two of you. You were humble, you were easy to talk to, you were inviting. It made the year easier to be away from two homes. Because for me, I'm in Uganda, I am home here in Michigan. And to see that role model of a couple that has stayed so together, work together, support each other, and get where you are. So thank you. And thank you for sharing that experience with us and the entire world.
Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you so much.
For everyone watching, please continue to share, learn, and unlearn. We'll put links of all the projects that Var and Carol have talked about in India, in Ethiopia, in Massachusetts, and some links of the work that continues to go around this area. Share your questions, share your ideas on how we can do this and address the hearing problem around the world. It's not for Var and Carol to do alone, it's for all of us. Thank you for coming, subscribe, continue to share. Best is yet to come.